So, Cal, let's talk about the worst WWE champions of all time.
Let's do it.
Now, I'm going to mention something here because I may have fucked up a little bit already. When we say WWE champions of all time, how strict are we on that?
Ooh.
I only ask because they've unified and ununified them a few hundred times. So we have a world champion, we have a WWE champion, we have just WWE champion. I can guarantee you the Universal Championship. No, shit, the Universal one's in there too. I've got a Universal one, Carl. Have I? Yes, I have. And I'm keeping it because I'm sick of this.
Ooh. I suppose we'll allow it. Why not?
All right, then. So it's the worst champions.
Yeah, where's top tier champions of all time?
I like it. There we go. But I mean, for the sake of clickbait, Carl, we'll call it WWE champions, or people aren't going to search top tier. So we'll call it WWE champions. But I warn everyone listening now, I don't want any smart remarks. I know one of them was Universal champion and not WWE champion. I don't care.
It does what he wants.
So let's start, Carl, with number one.
So number one, and again, I want to preface this. You know, this isn't necessarily how we feel about the performers or anything like that necessarily. Although I'm sure in a few cases that will be. But the first name I want to throw out is Kane. So
how dare you?
I know, right? So look, I was a massive Kane mark. You know, I had a poster of him on my wall. It actually was from a car boot sale, and they spelled his name wrong. They spelled it C-A-I-N. And I was fuming.
Sorry, I think you might need to translate that for our American audience.
From a, what do they call it? A
garage sale? Garage sale?
Yeah, car boot. Fucking car booty. But yeah, where people sell their shit. But there was like a poster stall, and someone had made a Kane poster, spelled his name wrong and everything. But I had that poster. It was on my wall. I covered his name with another poster of something else. But regardless, big fan of Kane. 1998, King of the Ring. The main event going on and following the fucking Hell in a Cell, where Mick Foley nearly died. It was Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Kane for the WWE title in a first blood match. Now, it's very hard to see anyone who wears a mask and wears like full head to toe of like leotard see them bleed. So it's
I feel like Austin might have put himself at a disadvantage, yeah?
Maybe slightly. And wouldn't you just know it? Austin ends up losing the match, and Kane is crowned for the very first time as the WWE champion, and his only time. And guess what? How long did that reign last? 24 hours, because the next night on Raw, our new champion Kane comes out, and Austin is granted a rematch for that belt, for the belt, and Kane fucking loses it. So, yeah, you know, I was made up when Kane won the belt. Don't get me wrong, I'm a huge Austin fan as well, but I was just so like popping for Kane winning it, and thought it was clever the way that he won. Obviously, first blood match and stuff like that. Like I loved it. I had this on VHS. Used to watch this over and over again. And then he ends up losing the bloody thing the next night on Raw. So, and it was the one and only time he was WWE champ. And yeah, what a terrible title reign.
See, this is before the cotton on, and he could have pulled a Brock Lesnar and just not turned up for Raw for a few months. That's how you retain your titles.
That's how the best champs do it.
That's the trick. But yeah, I mean, again, this one I think was a bit before I started, but on paper sounds fantastic. Kane winning the title, why not? But yeah. I hate screwy fucking things like this. Like, I would just drop the title again next week.
Yeah, like, well, it was the next night.
Week?
Yeah, it's the next night. Like,
shit.
Holy shit. And, you know, you'd think that was ludicrous, but there's a couple that I'm going to come on to that are even shorter than this. But, yeah, I was just gutted because I felt like Kane he'd done enough to be, you know, have a good run as the champion.
It almost feels like he's pissed someone off to have like not even a day, not even a full day worth of a run. That feels like he's angered someone there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think anything ever came out around the reasons. Maybe they just wanted to, you know, boost the ratings on Raw or something. But yeah, shit.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen them do this sort of thing before, where they just want the shock value on the pay-per-view, but they didn't actually want that run. So crazy stuff. Speaking of crazy stuff, Carl, we'll go to number 2, which is mine, which may be polarizing. I'd be interested to see what you think, Carl, because my pick is Rey Mysterio, which may or may not have been World Championship at the time because they can't decide whether they're unified or not. So we might have had the big gold belt back at this point, but he won a top-tier title. Now, I'll before I even moan, right? I know that Rey's a great wrestler, right? But we've mentioned this once before, and I'll mention it again. The crux of the matter here is he's a great cruiserweight. He doesn't fit in this title scene, right? And this is the main bit, right? So I have no issue with the win. I have no issue with the way it was built because it was built actually really quite well. He ended up on the cusp of winning a few times. I don't know if you remember it, Carl, but he I think that I want to say the title. I don't think it was vacated actually. Might have been at the time. It got a little bit confusing, but he entered a 20-man battle royal rumble. Nearly won and lost out to Mark Henry. He then entered the Royal Rumble and won. He then put that win up on the line against Randy Orton and lost. So Randy Orton was now the one with the title shot. And then he was randomly inserted into the match anyway as a triple threat. So it was always very touch and go. And, they built it up really well. So people were like, oh, come on, is he going to do it? And is he not? And, I cannot knock the triple threat match between Orton, Kurt Angle, and himself. Again, fantastic match. But the trouble I have is not so much the build-up and the earning the title. It's the fact that he held the title. He went up against so many basically huge people. He went up against the Big Show, Batista, all that sort of thing. I want to even say the Great Khali at one point, actually. And you can only tell the David and Goliath story so much. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not trying to be unfair. I know it's an entertainment business, and I know we can't work with real world weight classes as much as I think you should. I mean, you can do intergender, but anyway, I know that WWE's sort of scripted and these sort of things can happen, but for me, the stories always kind of collided with one another with this. It didn't suit him. And this might be an unpopular opinion, but when you've got people that you're building up as legitimate monsters who are tearing through a division, like the Animal Batista, and then he loses to Rey Mysterio, and every time, Rey was either outsized or outreached or something, but he always got the win. And it goes, well, you're kind of ruining the credibility of these people you've built up as unstoppable monsters, that this small, 5'6", under 200 odd pounds anyway, wrestler could dominate or could win. And I get that it can happen once or twice, but when he's consistently doing that to your biggest guys, it just felt a little bit silly. And for me, that's kind of the reason. And honestly, Carl, I'd love your opinion on this, right? Can you, after he won the title, barring that moment when he won it, which was fantastic, can you legitimately remember a fantastic title defense from Rey?
No.
Any of their matches go down in history for you?
No.
No, do they fuck? Right?
No.
And this is the problem I've got. His actual title run wasn't that great. It wasn't that memorable for me, and it just felt a bit odd. The only credit I want to give it is, and I'm going to take the credit away at the same time, while he was champion, he went into a program with Chavo Guerrero, who was playing the heel at the time, which is a little bit odd because then Rey is like, I've got Eddie at my side, or the spirit of Eddie. But Chavo was his actual family, but whatever. But you had Chavo and I think Vicky Guerrero was involved at the time as well, playing the heel role. And that feud was brilliant and played out really well. But that would have happened anyway. Didn't need the title. So I'm not going to include it. I'm not going to say this was part of like, oh, that was really memorable. It was, but didn't need the title. They could have had that feud and it wouldn't have mattered whether the title was there or not. So for me, I don't think, as much as I like Rey, I don't think this ever suited him. And I think that's the reason we need a cruiserweight division.
Yeah, I'll agree with that wholeheartedly. I think the problem is, like, the thing that's great about Rey initially with these things is he is the perfect underdog. He's like 5'4", 150 pounds, like fantastic performer, but at the same time he's the underdog because everyone he fights is significantly larger, more powerful, and he's got to use his speed against their strength. And yeah, makes perfect sense. But the problem is when you're constantly an underdog against everybody and you're beating everybody, it's not really an underdog story anymore. And the fact is that, you know, it's not necessarily, I think realistic's the wrong word, but, you know, there's, as you mentioned, some of the size of the guys and stuff that he ended up beating. It's like, you know, once or twice sound, but it just felt like he was just beating everyone.
A couple of examples there, right? Look at Big Show and the Great Khali, who both suffer the same problem where the in-ring work isn't particularly brilliant. But these men, like, are both over 7 foot tall, right? And weigh considerably more. Like, I don't know how much Khali weighed, but obviously Big Show was always billed as 500 pounds. Like, they were massive men. And with being such a giant comes the reach as well. How the fuck is realistically Rey going to beat them consistently? And he beat both of them in that title run. Like, just as, and again, you could argue that Khali's a shit wrestler, which on paper, yeah, he's not. I'll get into that, but he's not. he's not the best wrestler. But at the same time, that's where it looks massively unrealistic.
Yeah. No, I think you know, I understand why they did it, and you know, it's not only that they've done it once; they've done it a couple of times. But it just, he is a cruiserweight, and he should not be in the heavyweight picture, and he never should have been. And it's always felt a bit silly. So,
well, it's the crazy thing now because they have 205.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, that's their weight set, isn't it? That if you're under 205 pounds, then you're a cruiserweight and can compete for the title. So, like, why set that up if it doesn't matter? Like, you can challenge for the top heavyweight title, as it were, whenever you like, but you can only challenge for this one if you're 205.
Yeah, I don't know.
Crazy.
I feel like in today's product, they should either like abolish the whole kind of cruiserweight heavyweight thing and just have champion, or actually really, you know, go into it and make it realistic.
Yeah. Well, again, I think we've both leaned into, like, that is probably the easiest way to do intergender matches and make it look realistic, is to then go into weight class, because then you're never going to have like Alexa Bliss versus the Big Show, because that would be ridiculous as Rey Mysterio versus the Big Show. But yeah, I mean, bear in mind as well, I think Rey was like 2 years before this title run, he was the cruiserweight champion, and it suited him, and he was having matches with the likes of Hurricane, which suited him. It just made sense, and they were more enjoyable matches.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people have a lot of love for him, and you know, he's given his eye for this company, but
I'll be damned.
So, Carl, number 3.
Number 3 on the list is, and this is one of the worst moments in wrestling history for me, WrestleMania 9. It was the crowning of yokozuna as the WWF champion at the time. So WrestleMania 9, main event, yokozuna and Bret Hart. And it was a screwy finish whereby Mr. Fuji threw, like, I don't know, salt powder, whatever the fuck it was, sand, into Bret's eye. You know, Bret couldn't see, and then Yoko ends up using that to his advantage and end up pinning him and becoming the champ. It was also unfortunate, really, because Yoko was absolutely fucked. He was gassed. You know, at this point, he was fucking huge. Like, he was, you know, he was always built as being a big, you know, sumo wrestler, but he was starting to pile the pounds on.
Massive here, wasn't he? To be
fair. And, you know, not as big as he ended up being a year or two later, but he started to look really big. But he was getting blown up all the time in his matches, just like huffing and puffing. And, you know, Bret, being probably the best wrestler of all time, did everything he could to, you know, give him a good match. But he basically, I believe it might have been in Bret's book, but I believe he said that kind of Yoko went home for himself. Like, he couldn't get up and finish the match the way they planned. So he just kind of lay there and was like, put the sharpshooter on me now. And like, he couldn't even move. So Bret's there trying to like lift him up. Do you know what I mean? Like, carried him through this whole fucking match. And the reason why this is bullshit is because this was all done to bring Hulk Hogan back. And immediately following that match, you know, Hogan comes out and talks about what an injustice it is that, you know, Bret's lost the match and stuff. And, you know, Bret's obviously like, you know, you go and get them, Hulkster. Why would you do that? Right?
Yeah,
So
not
that
keeping
was pointless.
It tall character-wise.
And then the worst manager ever, Mr. Fuji, is like, you know what, Hulk? I'll give you a title match right now. Yokozuna can barely breathe.
Yeah, he's
You know what I
passed
mean?
out, still in the ring. Like,
Exactly.
just
right?
jump in and pin him. He's fucked.
Well, exactly. That's pretty much how it went. He literally just fell back on the floor, did a leg drop. I think
I was going to say, there's got to have been a leg drop involved. It's Hogan.
Well, that was it. I think it was like 30 seconds. I think Hogan was crowned the new champ and was like holding it in the air and doing his little like ear thing before Brett had even returned to the back. So like, what a fucking shit show. Like, why do that? It was literally only done as a way to just bring Hogan back and give him the belt straight away, and it was absolutely bullshit. And what makes this worse as well is, by all accounts, after the match, Hogan came back and shook Brett's hand and was like, "I want to thank you. You know, I'll return the favor." Blah blah blah. So then a couple of weeks, months, however long it was later, when it came time for Hogan to move on to pastures new, he refused to drop it to Brett, and then dropped it back to Yoko.
Just
So
cunty moves like that. That's how I remember Hogan.
That's the Hogan we know and despise. But yeah, like what a shit show.
What a scumbag move.
Yokozuna is your champion for all of about a minute, and then Hogan comes back and just pins him.
I was annoyed over the Kane one. I mean, wow. You even get like a night out of it. Wow.
Yeah, what an absolute waste of time. I was fuming, absolutely fuming. So yeah, Yokozuna, you were a shit champion, and then you went on to win it again, and you were shit then too. So yeah, fuck you. May you rest in peace.
Nice.
Sorry.
Okay, so number 4. Now again, I'm knocking against this wrestler. We're going to say this a lot, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
My next one is Kofi Kingston, which is not going to surprise a lot of people. And a lot of people actually may agree with me on what I want to say, in the fact that the actual build-up to him winning the title was fantastic. Everyone was behind him when he won the title. I was behind him when he won the title. Brilliant. But then his run kind of became lackluster. I don't think that's at the fault of Kofi, but there wasn't a lot there, like in terms of like, again, very similar to Rey, where I'm like, are there any memorable title defenses that I can recall? No. Sadly, the most memorable part of Kofi's run was being destroyed in 10 seconds by Brock Lesnar on SmackDown, not even a pay-per-view, to lose his title. And bear in mind, they let Kofi have this title for what, like 170 odd days, I think, off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he didn't just like win it and lose it again. He actually had a run with the title. And then for me, this was a massive bit of disrespect on Kofi, like to Kofi, to just have him lose so ridiculously easily to Brock. And this is one of them things that always pisses me off, where it's like, you've had them legitimately go up against the likes of Randy Orton, and then, you know, pull out all the stops and pull out a win. You've had him wrestle some incredible wrestlers, but he can't take on Brock. He can't even last against Brock for more than 10 seconds. I hate this sort of booking because it just negates everything up to that point. But that being said, it just wasn't a memorable championship run. I don't know what it is with this. I don't know if maybe, and I don't want to be unfair to him, but again, he's another one where I know a lot of people said it's a long time coming, as well deserved. I don't know if he necessarily suits being top tier champion. And again, I don't actually know his weight billing, but he looks more of a cruiserweight. He moves more of a cruiserweight. And I don't know, like, could there be a title run in the future that's going to be more impactful and more memorable? I don't know. I honestly doubt it. But for me, yeah, a very similar complaint to Rey, where it seemed a little bit ill-suited and a little bit lackluster in terms of the actual title run. But the winning of it, you can never knock him for that. He had his moment there.
Oh god, yeah, Kofi Mania and the rise of Kofi Mania was fantastic, and that reaction he got at WrestleMania when he became champion after so long,
yeah,
you know, was fantastic. But I think you're absolutely right. Where he went next from that, it just wasn't very memorable. It wasn't very good. There's a lot of things he could have done to make it better and more memorable. And again, it's not necessarily a slight on Kofi. It was just more that, you know, after that whole kind of Kofi Mania thing, I think they kind of penciled themselves into a corner a bit. Where'd you go from there? How do you build on?
I think annoyingly,
Kofi
it kind of
Mania?
went back to the whole New Day thing. Like, he never really had a singles run. He was Kofi from the New Day with a title.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I don't know if maybe that might have been some of the problem, because you kind of like, you remember the New Day giving him his new belt and stuff like that, because I believe was it that weird hemp belt or whatever he had?
Yeah, the Planet's belt or something.
The Planet's belt. So like, and this is where I'm a bit loath to say that he might suit the cruiserweight division more because in all fairness, like going up against the likes of Daniel Bryan, that didn't look odd. But I don't know. There's just something about his run that didn't really gel very well. And you can't even say it's for lack of opponents. There's some really good talent on SmackDown. And for me, the way they ended it, it might be a long time before we see that again.
Yeah, I don't think we ever will, unfortunately. It's one of those. I don't think it was just him dropping the ball or anything. I think it was just okay. We put so much into the build up about you being the underdog and it being so long in the making, and then once he was the champion, where'd you go from there? What's your story? Do you know what I mean? And they just didn't have one for him, unfortunately. So
yeah. See, this is where and again, he might have been relying on creative or whatever, and they might, New Day sell merch, so they might not have wanted to take any risks, but it might have been a good time for a heel run. Becomes a bit full of himself, a bit arrogant. We never got anything like that really. It was the same old Kofi. So yeah, a bit of a sad one, but again, I think that's quite a renowned one as well. I think a lot of people weren't a big fan of him as champion. Even the people who were well behind him becoming champ suddenly turned on him. It was quite. I almost feel sorry for him for that one, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it was a shame.
And Carl, would you like to go into number 5?
5 time. So number 5, I'm gonna say Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man,
okay.
And this is technically the title reign that never was. So to set the scene, basically, Hulk Hogan was the champion at the time, and he was defending against Andre the Giant. And what happened was the referee counted the 3, despite Hulk Hogan's shoulder being up. And basically, what we found out as another referee ran down to the ring is the referee Dave Hebner was not meant to be the referee sorry, no. So Dave Hebner was meant to be the referee that night, but it was actually Earl Hebner, who is Dave Hebner's twin brother in real life.
The classic Hebner switch.
That's it. And
See, all too much in wrestling.
Ted DiBiase had paid him off to count the 3 count fast on Hogan. So we're kind of just looking at it, and both the Hebner brothers are just staring at each other in the ring. It's like, what the fuck? So that's quite weird in itself. But Andre is now the champ, and he basically decides to relinquish that title to DiBiase, assuming he was paid off to do so, because obviously he's the $1 Million Man. So technically, that made the $1 Million Man the champion for around a week or so. And that was until Jack Tunney, who was the president at the time, basically was like, no, shenanigans, I'm not having that. Stripped him of the title and then set up a championship tournament. So, unfortunately, it's not recognised as an official reign.
Interesting.
And it's a shame, really, because Ted DiBiase, he should have had a run with that title, and by all accounts, he was meant to as well, and it just never happened, just due to Hogan and politics and stuff like that. So that was the main reason why they created the $1 Million title, to give him something of his own. But yeah, DiBiase was fantastic character, fantastic performer, and I thought this was a really clever way to do it. Like he bought the match, he bought Andre, he's effectively bought the title. Then they just went with the whole like, oh no, the Jack Tunney's overturned it and it wasn't real, and you're not going to be recognised on the record books. And yeah, so for me, it's got to be on here because technically it was a reign, but it's not seen as a reign. And then it was vacated, and then there was a tournament, and DiBiase didn't win that. He lost in the final to Randy Savage. So yeah, for me, I just think he's got to take place as one of the worst champions, because it's just the way it went about. They had something good there, I thought, and they just fucked it up. Because I thought that, for the way they played it off, for the whole the Hebner thing, the fact he bought it, I thought it was really good, and then they just didn't follow through with it. And whether that was due to Hogan and the politics and kicking up a bit of a stink or what, but yeah, it just didn't happen. Crazy
stuff. And do you know what? From a story point of view, that's actually, like you say, it's ingenious, isn't it, to do something a bit creative with it? Because I don't mind screwy finishes when they're done right, but to have them like essentially have bought the championship, a really interesting way to go. And it's a shame it never really paid off.
Well, that's it. It fits his character down to a T as well. He was
Oh
just
yeah,
like
yeah.
he was a millionaire. He could get whatever he wanted. He bought everything off, and he was like doing this little laugh and stuff. And I proper I popped for it, me. But no, was never to be, unfortunately, and he would never go on to win the title properly ever in the rest of his career.
That's a real shame.
Hmm.
So, number 6. Right, I'm gonna have to stop doing that because the camera's backwards and it looks odd. Anyway, this won't take long, Carl. Goldberg, right? This isn't Goldberg when he come back and beat Brock. This is Goldberg when he decided to turn up like an old, bald, arrogant knob, right? And decide that he shouldn't take a loss to Bray Wyatt because he's the good guy and children look up to him. Children don't know who the fuck you are, Goldberg, right? But anyway, he comes along and he insists from, again, I might find out that it was not his insistence, but I'm pretty sure it was. Comes up and insists that he goes over Bray, right? So, firstly, it pisses me off because he won at the detriment of something that they were building. I knew a younger talent that they were building up really well, right? And then you go, you know what? That's fine. He draws numbers. Everyone knows Goldberg. I'm sure he's going to have a good run with the title, and it'll be at least profitable for them to have totally fucking ruined something like that, right? And then his first title defense at WrestleMania, Carl, against Braun Strowman. And what happens? He loses the fucking title quite quickly as well. Why did he lose the title, Carl? Because he didn't plan on doing much else wrestling wise. It wasn't in his contract. He got his payday. He doesn't fucking care. If you knew you weren't going to be around, why the fuck did you insist on ruining the title run?
Mm.
This is why we can't have nice things.
Yep. It's still one of the craziest booking decisions ever. That certainly within the last decade, I cannot fathom a reason or like a rationale behind why they did that. Especially if there was never going to be a payoff. Like if it was a way to have the Fiend lose and then come back and just demolish Goldberg, awesome.
See, and this is the thing. And you know what, right? I'm not even letting them blame COVID for this, right? Because the pre-COVID plan was for Roman Reigns to take him on. So don't even try and act like there was a plan that went wrong. I don't care that it ended up being Braun, right? They totally ruined the Fiend. Well, luckily the Fiend had a much better WrestleMania than Goldberg did. I'm so pleased with that. But it still pisses me off. Nothing soured me more to Goldberg than this kind of fucking behavior.
Yeah, so, it's like classic WWE just used Bray almost like so that they could have Reigns go over Goldberg because that would have made to be fair, Goldberg, like if you look at like our TikTok and our social media and the comments and stuff we get, people legit like who are frustrated with the product today are like, oh, why aren't they bringing back people like Goldberg? It's Goldberg all the time. So he's white hot and he's still seen as a star, even though he is fucking old and past it now. So even with the younger audience, they are big on him. So you can kind of see it to a degree, but there's no way they should have made the Fiend, who was the best character they've built in fucking forever, take a loss like a detriment to his kind of character.
I can't think of anything more disheartening, right, than being on top of your game, doing something you love, and then your granddad fucking walks in, and everyone goes, "Well, we got to do what he says," and he comes in, and he's like, "I want your belt."
It's just not very like reminiscent of the Yoko Bret Hart Hulk Hogan shenanigans. Bret Hart carried the company for ages while Hogan fucked off. Comes back, all right, granddad, what you want me belt? Okay, sound.
And that's it. And it's just that massive fuck you to the guy who's actually been making the product relevant for you.
Yeah.
And
I'm trying to think who plays what role in this. So I'm guessing Bray Wyatt would have been the Bret Hart, and then Goldberg is the Yoko, I guess, because he's the transitional. Ultimately, it's Roman Reigns who's fucking Hogan, because ultimately it was to get the fucking belt on him, wasn't it? So
I like it, yeah. But the only good thing to come of these things, and I think it's probably true for the Hogan side of things as well, is that I know from reading that Bray earns a lot of respect from backstage for taking that loss, because everyone knew it was a bit of a fuck you to Bray. But for being a professional and dealing with it as he did, he took a lot of respect for that. And I don't know, I imagine Brett kind of got similar treatment because he got screwed over there. And it's not the first time that Brett's been screwed over. Well, it might have been the first time. Did that come before the Montreal? It must have come before the Montreal screw job.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Yeah.
was it just like, did he just get screwed over a lot, Brett?
Well, I was just thinking that it's ironic that Earl Hebner was the guy who screwed over Hulk Hogan in a kayfabe, and then years later he would go on to legitimately screw Brett.
Yeah,
funny that.
Like I'm beginning to see why Brett's book is a lot of moaning. To be honest,
Yeah.
Like he seems to have a lot to moan about actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's no disrespect to his book, by the way. It's a very interesting book, but he kind of complains about WWE a fair bit.
Yeah, he's definitely lived through some shit.
Yeah. So yeah, it didn't take long, that one, Carl. But I thought nothing else needs said about Goldberg. He needs to stay the fuck away from wrestling, as far as I'm concerned, right now. Because if he's going to come back just to ruin what's currently going on and then piss off once he's got his money, no, not interested.
No, same.
So number 7.
So number 7 on this list is Rob Van Dam. And Rob Van Dam, you fucked this up big style. So look, again, huge RVD fan. Used to absolutely love him in ECW. Loved him when he came over to WWE. Fantastic talent.
Yeah, what do you make of his current sort of semi-career? Because all I see him do lately is promote weed.
Yeah, I mean,
do you do wrestling anymore, RV? I don't even know.
I guess
literally all I see on your social media.
I guess it's great to do what you love, right?
But, again, each their own. I'm not that thingy, but I'm like, there's no wrestling content on your social media anymore.
Oh no, he's definitely just all about the weed now. I think the weed and the ladies. I believe like there's pictures of him with just scantily clad models quite often. I
specifically chose not to complain about that.
Yeah. But yeah, so like RVD on this list. So he won the WWE title at ECW's One Night Stand. The return to the fucking Philadelphia, where ECW emanated from all them years ago, a very ECW crowd shitting all over John Cena, and then RVD, gets the rub, wins the title. That's a massive push for him, massive endorsement.
Cool ass music hits because it's cool. That music was awesome. One of a kind he was. One of a
felt like he just needed to take something for a sore throat. That guy. But yeah, so he wins the belt, fucking like top of his game. We never thought we'd see the day. Rob Van Dam is the WWE champion. He then, because he's on the ECW brand, he then decided to make an ECW title as well. And because he's just won the WWE title, they give him the ECW one as well. So he's two belts, top of the game.
Robbie two belts.
The old Robbie two belts. The only person to ever be WWE and ECW champion at the same time. Flying high. And do you know you were talking about him promoting all that weed and stuff?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Way back in the One Night Stand days, same kind of guy. Because unfortunately, less than a month after he won these belts, he was busted in a car ride with Sabu, and they found a fuck ton of weed and Vicodin pills.
You saying he was doing something taboo with Sabu?
Very taboo with Sabu. So yeah, he got busted with all that shit in his car, and obviously that was a violation of the wellness policy, and he was basically suspended for 30 days. And as
I recall
a result,
this because I believe there was some suggestion that it was quite well known that he had a penchant for the weed. The weed, not to sound like an old man, Carl. The weed, the weed.
The ganja.
But I'm given to understand, like certain people like Stephanie McMahon and they knew quite well he did it, but were like, be discreet about it. So presumably this was him not being discreet.
Well, I believe he was actually it was live streamed or something. I believe someone
Probably Rob
filmed him. Probably. But yeah, I could be chatting shit here, but I'm sure I read something around it. Like it was like maybe he would have got off with like a slap on the wrist, but it was he was arrested and it was live streamed and people could see like everything, and so they had no choice really but to do what he did. So yeah, absolutely fucking gutted for him. He's just become the first guy ever to hold WWE and ECW belts, riding very high, and then literally riding too high. So
nice.
yeah.
I'm curious. I don't know if you would know the answer to this, Carl. I'm going to ask you anyway. Is that still a violation of the wellness policy now?
I believe so. Yeah, I don't believe you can do
because
it.
Isn't the state of Florida, which is largely where the performance center is, though, aren't they quite weed friendly now?
Is it only for not recreational? Is it only for
only for recreation? If you need it medically, you're fucked.
Is it not like is it not still like you can't use it recreationally, but you can use it, or is it just that everyone's cool with it now? I'm not sure.
I think some states are still very much, you can only have it if it's medicinal. I could be wrong. Any Americans who are fully up to date on this kind of thing might be able to clarify. But I feel like Florida might actually be okay with recreational use. So you can just go shop and buy some now. Could be wrong,
Okay.
but you have to go to specific weed shops. But I think that is a thing. I was just curious because it's like it'd be annoying if it's something that's not even a problem now. That just totally fucked his career then.
Maybe it's like depending on what state you're in at the time. Like they're driving, between states, and he's all cool. And as soon as you pass the border, it's like wellness violation.
We got him.
So you never know.
Nice.
Yeah. So poor Rob Van Dam. He could have gone on to be a lot more and have quite a good run there, but he fucked himself over a bit, unfortunately.
He did. It certainly doesn't seem to have damaged his career or lifestyle, though. Let's be honest.
Well, it's true. Same guy now as he was then.
So we'll move on to number 8, and this is Jinder Mahal. Now, I don't want to hinder Jinder, right? I do that anytime we mention him. I try and shoehorn that in there. I'm going to say sorry to everyone right now. So I think for me, this was very much a problem of timing. I think he has what it takes to be a world champion or WWE champion or whatever. I think at the time they chose to do this, Vince had his particular agenda. He wanted to specifically have Jinder or an Indian person hold the title, diversity and all that. Nice one, Vince. And I don't think he was ready. I think he was very green. We saw him botch a few times. He obviously went out on injury as well. I think after losing the title, obviously, but went out on injury for some time, which again, typically with WWE, that'll sour you to Vince. Vince doesn't like people who can get hurt. But when you consider like he went from being like a member of 3MB, yeah, and probably the least charismatic member of 3MB, to be in, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because I don't remember Heath holding one, but this made Jinder the first one of those 3 to hold a title.
Yeah.
And he was literally the least charismatic and the least like. If you'd have had to place bets on which one of those 3 was going to hold a world championship first, you probably would have gone Heath at the time, in all fairness.
Mm-hmm. And he definitely seemed like he was going to be the breakout. Like Drew, didn't give a fuck at the time, and Jinder was just Jinder. Like we never felt that would ever be possible.
Exactly. And and for me it was just I don't think I honestly don't think he had the really had the mic skills. I don't think he had the in-ring skills. I don't think he was as polished as he needed to be so main event. And I honestly we mentioned it a few weeks ago when he returned. Don't know, he's injured again. Whoops. But when he returned and it looked like he was going to go against Drew, I was all for it. I don't know how I would have felt about the win because I'm enjoying Drew as champion as much as it's kind of probably not been the best run for Drew, but due to circumstance, it's hard when you've not got a crowd. But I was all for this feud, even if Jinder had won it, and I think he has the chops and the potential to in the future have a really good title run. But sadly, at this point, with this sort of this run, it just didn't work. And again, I couldn't even tell you. Never mind about his title. I couldn't even tell you who he won it from. That's how lackluster it was. It was like, how great was that match? It wasn't. It just there was nothing to it. The only distinct thing you remember from his run was randomly the Great Khali coming back, and then not coming back because you never saw him again. That's literally the only memorable thing from his title run for me. It's like, oh fucking hell, Great Khali's back, and that was it.
Yeah,
that's all she wrote.
I think the big issue, like with me for Jinder, wasn't even the fact that he won it. Like, okay, cool, it was shock value, didn't expect it. It was the fact he held it for fucking ages, and it was
Yeah, it
just
was
like,
well over
really,
100 days for him, wasn't it?
like that's fucking ages. Like, it's like ludicrous. Really, the fact he held it for that long.
How long did Ludacris hold it for?
Oh, I think he's their fourth time 24/7 champ. Probably. But yeah, I don't know. I just I don't want to hinder Jinder, but it was a surprising, shocking win, which I think it was cool in that sense. He'd obviously spent his time getting absolutely shredded and looking the part, and that
You
obviously
see,
went a
for
long way
me,
with Vince. But
this could have worked though in that sense. Like he built himself up. He ended up looking at it like he looked like a monster, like physically looked like a monster at that point. And you could have easily done a story there where like the ultimate jobber like sort of gets his due and becomes the champion. They could have actually worked on the fact that he's done nothing but job out. Um, it could have been really they could have built him as a heel just on the back of that, but it just did not work. I don't know. It's such a shame, such a weak run. But I still hold out hope, Carl. I hold out hope that one day he will return and it'll be good.
well, yeah, I mean, I was obviously quite pumped the fact that he did come back and at what potentially would have happened between him and Drew, but unfortunately it was not to be. But at least it meant we got to see Heath come back for a one-off. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a shame though that like Jinder weren't there at the time for the Heath bit.
Well, yeah, true.
But these things were never meant to happen. So, Carl, sorry, I'm just trying to remember what number we're on. Number 9. I think yours is probably going to be the best one.
Or the worst.
To me, this is a class. Like, at no point has this ever been more corrupt to do this sort of booking. This is brilliant. Like, go on. Sorry.
So number 9 is Vincent Kennedy McMahon, because obviously, if you own the company, you'll make yourself the champion.
Not that way. I'm not even gonna try and call Vince on this one. I'd have done the same fucking thing.
Yeah, it's the most Vince McMahon thing ever, isn't it? He's probably just sat there one day going, I own this company. I want to be champion of it. I don't care how long for. I just want to say that Vince McMahon was the WWE champion. I'm going to make that happen.
So, unlike a lot of champions on the list, he actually wore pants, so he did need a belt.
This is very true. Actually, he wasn't there in his skivvies. He did need to hold them jogging bottoms up. But yeah, so like the match he booked, it was he had Shane McMahon as a special ref, obviously to try and have things in his favor. He was going up against Triple H at the time, and it was actually Austin coming down, who was also in a feud with Triple H, and stunned Triple H that led to Vince winning the belt, which is the most fucking bizarre thing ever. Austin's
I love it.
for it. But yeah, so I believe
I'd be walking down the street with that fucking thing if I was Vince.
I believe I think it was some sort of stipulation or something like a week or so later where his belt was on the line or something, and he ended up relinquishing the title. It was literally like days later, maybe like a week or so later. But yeah, it's got to be on here because like it was just the most pointless reign ever. Like, even when Vince entered the Royal Rumble and he came down looking absolutely jacked, and we had those like training vignettes and stuff like that, was awesome. It made sense and everything cool. This was just like, fuck it, I want to be champ for a bit. Yeah. And it's like, okay, boss, sad.
That's the thing. This is almost as crazy as, let's say, I don't know, Shane McMahon being declared the greatest wrestler in the world through some sort of tournament.
Exactly. It's probably not quite as crazy as Vince McMahon beating God, which also definitely happened. But it's definitely crazy, and for someone with the ego and character of Vince, then it's probably not really a surprise that he's booked himself at one point to be the champion of his own company. So fair play, you crazy egotistical bastard.
Yeah, I mean, you will go down in history as one of the 50 odd champions we've had.
That's it.
No one can take that away from you, Vince. No one.
Exactly. Nobody can.
But just to put a little itch in your brain, Vince, if you're listening, which you probably are because you've got nothing but 3 time, you've never had the Universal Champion. Never held that belt, have you? Just mentioning that.
Yeah, getting on a bit now, Vince.
I think you could take Braun. I think you could take him.
I think probably most people could, to be fair. It's not the sharpest tool in the shed.
To be honest, you own the company. Just go out to the ring and tell him to lie down.
Yeah, pretty much. You're probably like, oh, Braun, go sleep now? Okay. Anyway.
Good times. So, number 10. The Great Khali is is it my last one? I think it's my last one, Cal, right? This is a little bit of a strange one for me because on paper this works. The Great Khali is what, like 7'2". He's a monster of a man. He came in, the story was written, he came in, he was tearing through some of the biggest stars in there. He won a 20-man battle royal. He was looking every bit the monster. Except he looks shit in the ring. He can't wrestle. And this is the biggest problem. Like, on paper, it works. A monster holding the title because he's a legit monster. But there was not a single match that weren't hindered by the fact that he just couldn't wrestle. And don't get me wrong, I have nothing but sympathy for him because I believe that's half the reason he doesn't wrestle now is because he's got a lot of medical issue, a lot of joint issues and so on like that. So he was obviously plagued with this stuff during his run as well. But I don't know. Again, I don't mean any disrespect to him when I say this, but every time I saw him in a match, you could just see the other person trying to carry this lumbering oaf. Yeah. And it's hard to say that without I'm not being disrespectful, but sadly, he couldn't go in the ring. So it doesn't need much more saying than that. I've nothing against the way they booked it. I've nothing against the idea or the concept that he was tearing through everyone because he had the physique and the build. It made sense. And he had more of a wrestling career than I realized he had, to be honest. When I was doing the research for this, he'd actually, he'd done some legitimate training work for the promotions, done New Japan. But I think very similarly, all in the same gimmick of just being an absolute behemoth. But I don't know, he's never had the ring presence to actually hold this or to be a legitimate champion. And I think it was always a little bit for me, like when you see Big Show. I don't think he's had too many title runs. When you see Big Show with a title run, it was a similar idea where it's like it doesn't really suit because he's quite slow paced in the ring, but no, nothing like Khali. Khali just, I don't know. It was not good. Even his finisher wasn't great, was it? Let's be honest. So no. That's the reason he's made it to list me. I have absolutely nothing, no disrespect for him. I have no complaints like I did with Goldberg, but sadly, he should never have been a champion. He should have been the spectacle that he was. He would have drawn just from the fact that people would be like, Jesus, they'd want to see him in a match. You know what I mean? They didn't need to put a strap on him at all, as far as I'm concerned.
No, I think, to be honest, it was mainly due to his medical conditions. I think by the time he arrived in WWE, he had serious mobility issues. I think there was even something going around about maybe even he had to have like his ankles fused or something like that at one point.
Just the thing, because that's the bit that surprised me, because he had quite a wrestling career when you look at the credentials before it. Namely New Japan, which is known for being a lot more fast-paced as well. So it doesn't surprise me that you say, a lot of it is down to the medical issues. But sadly, I've never seen him in another promotion. So the only example I've got is Khali in WWE.
Yeah, I think it's what I mean. I'm not saying he's ever been Wrestler of the Year candidate or anything, but he was.
But no, you could see his mobility, and this wasn't great.
Yeah. It's one of them. It was just a silly decision to put the belt on him at all. As you said, use him as a sideshow spectacle and, things like that. But to have him as you look at the list of names who've held that belt, the great Khali, I struggle to find anyone who is worse or least kind of, I don't even want to say deserving, just that it just is so wrong. Do you know what I mean? Everyone we've been through today in this segment, you can kind of understand and create a case for us, but no matter how bad their runs were. But the Great Khali just kind of felt like we need a heel. He's a big monster. We'll just give it to him. And yeah, I don't know. It's got to be one of the worst ever, I think.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. And now for the special bonus, number 11. Go, Cal.
The special bonus one. So this one, I don't know. I mean, I included DiBiase, so I can kind of include this maybe. But I want to talk about the Brian Kendrick.
I feel like you mentioned him last week as well, very briefly, surprisingly.
Essentially.
Was there more about cruiserweights then as well?
Maybe. Probably a Rey Mysterio in there somewhere, probably giving him some shit. But yeah, so look, Brian Kendrick, or Spanky as he first came onto the scene.
fucking hell.
He was.
That's just, I totally forgot about that.
Oh yeah, he was. He was the bus boy as well, wasn't he, for the Undertaker skits and stuff. Like fucking hell, like this guy is basically. I've always liked him. To be fair, I've always liked, I liked the Spanky stuff, the stuff with Undertaker. I liked him as a tag team with Paul London.
I legit never thought you'd say that. I like the Spanky.
I like the Spanky stuff. But I thought the whole Brian Kendrick character was amazing. I thought it was really, really good. So did WWE at the point of 2008. What they also thought were great at that time were scramble matches. So that's basically where the get competitors come down to the ring, start a timer, introduce another one, so on and so forth. And then once the time ends, whoever's champion at the end is the official champion. But what it basically meant is during one of these scramble matches in Unforgiven 2008, we actually got to see the Brian Kendrick pin Jeff Hardy and become the interim WWE champion, the longest reigning interim WWE champion, because he was the champion for quite a bit of time during the match until he later got pinned by Jeff Hardy, and then it was Jeff Hardy and Triple H sharing the pins until the timer ran out and Triple H was crowned champ. But you'll be able to see the match graphic online if you search for the Brian Kendrick champion. Clearly says the Brian Kendrick WWE champion. So it definitely happened in my book, whether
definitely
it's
counts
or not.
Totally legitimately happened.
But yeah, like, could you ever imagine a world in which fucking Spanky was your WWE champion at one point? Like, crazy, whether it was official or not, it happened.
Yeah.
And
it was a thing, and it happened.
It was a thing, and it happened. And do you know what? Fuck it. I thought the Brian Kendrick was a really good character, and it's a bit of a shame, really, that
I dare say it was the best sort of character he had.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't be wrong. He gave it anything they threw at him to do. He gave it his all. To be fair to Brian, he put a lot of years in there, and he was never objectionable. But I think this was probably his best work in terms of character work for him.
Yeah, definitely. He's still knocking around today, isn't he? From time to time, he's a trainer in NXT.
Yeah, I think he delivered my pizza today as well. Actually,
is he wearing the busboy outfit?
Yeah,
Spanky name tag. But yeah, so I wanted to mention it just because if you look, back at all the champions over time and stuff like that, like you won't really see the Brian Kendrick mentioned. But for me, I'm taking it. I think he was the longest reigning interim WWE champion that we ever had. So nice. Yeah, that is our list,
and that is your number 11.
It is.
So that's our unique segment of the week, guys. We hope you've enjoyed it.
This week's episode is brought to you by floriday.co.uk, where you can get all the latest news about Florida, Disney, and Universal Studios, as well as valuable tips and touring plans to get the most out of your Florida holiday. That's floriday.co.uk, the sunshine state of mind.
Well, hello, Carl and Anthony. Hey, it's the hardcore legend Mick Foley saying hello. What a beautiful afternoon it is. Wow, gorgeous May afternoon. There's a view of the river at the Foley compound. Just want to say hello to you guys and let you know that I'm looking forward to listening to you on A to the K, the podcast. I am not yet exposed to much in the world of podcasting, but I think I'm going to start. I hear great things about you guys. I appreciate you being fans. I'm going to go out on a limb and just guess that you guys are big wrestling fans, so I'm going to thank you for your support over the years. Have a nice day.